Hello, my name is Wayne Glines. I'm the president of the Herbert M. Parker Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you to the Fall 2020 Herbert M. Parker Lecture. Our lecturer today will be Dr. Luis Bertelli, who will be speaking to us about the radiological accident in Goiania. But before we get to the lecture, I'd like to take a few moments to give you some background information on the Parker Foundation, as well as Herbert M. Parker himself. Herbert M. Parker was born in 1910 in Great Britain, and he was a British radiophysicist who pioneered the 1930s medical radiation therapy and radiation safety. In 1938, Parker immigrated to the United States to continue his work at the Swedish hospital in Seattle. In 1942, he was recruited to help establish health and safety programs for the Manhattan Project, first at Oak Ridge until 1944, where he was brought to the Hanford site, where he established the world's first large-scale radiation safety program. Parker was a pioneer of the modern field of radiation safety. His procedures and protocols developed at Hanford have been adopted throughout the world. Parker is known for introducing the Rankine equivalent physical, which led to the REM and subsequently the Gray, and the Rankine equivalent biologic, which led to the REM and subsequently the Siebert. Following the Manhattan Project, Parker developed and managed the Hanford Laboratories, which later became the Pacific Northwest National Laboratories. The Parker Foundation was established in 1987 as a nonprofit organization. It was created to honor and perpetuate the high ethical and scientific standards of Herbert M. Parker. In 1997, the endowment funds were transferred to the Washington State University Foundation, and we established a partnership with Washington State University Tri-Cities campus. The work of the Parker Foundation supports scientific and educational activities to promote academic programs and public understanding of science and technology. Activities include lectures and seminars such as today's lecture. We provide academic scholarships, particularly to students who are studying radiological and related sciences. We have also participated in the Hanford History Project, in particular the Oral History Project for the Hanford site. As part of our educational activities, we've established collaborations with the Tri-Cities campus of the Washington State University, Columbia Basin College, and Delta High School. Additional information on the Parker Foundation can be found at our website. Our speaker today, again, is Dr. Luis Bertelli. He received his doctorate degree in biophysics from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1990. Prior to that, he received a master's degree in nuclear engineering and a Bachelor of Science degree in physics. Dr. Bertelli has been an internal dosimetrist at Flannel, Los Alamos National Laboratory since 2003, and a member of the ICRP Task Group on Dose Calculation since 1995. He served as a member of the ICRP Committee 2 from 2013 to 2017. He is currently a member of the United States Transuranic and Uranium Registries, the Scientific Advisory Committee. He has since where he's been serving since 2018. And he is a member of the U.S. National Committee on the National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurement since 2019. Prior to turning it over to Dr. Bertelli, if anyone has any comments or questions during the course of the lecture, please use the chat function and column on the YouTube feed, and we'll try to get to as many questions and answers as we can at the end of Dr. Bertelli's lecture. So now, Dr. Bertelli, please take over.
Okay, Wayne, thank you very, very much. It's a true honor to be here, to be selected for this very prestigious lecture. Wow. And so I have been delivering this lecture in other places, but never like this, so it will be an interesting experience for everybody. Okay, so I will start the presentation just telling you that once you participate in a radiological accident, you don't get scared of anything. Even when I see my credit card bill nowadays, I don't get scared anymore because I learned to deal with those emergencies, let me say. Okay, and so you learn how to do with that. Your life changed tremendously. And as as I'm pretty sure that I've been watched now by several friends and colleagues who have participated in this accident as well, trying to mitigate the consequences. And their lives also changed significantly. So, well, so this talk will be about what you can find in the literature and also added by my personal experiences. So if I could have the privilege of having my other colleagues talking to, together with that, they'll have also their own impressions, their own experiences into that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of what I felt and what you can find in the literature and what that was. So first of all, let me localize you in time. So we're going back to 1987. So 33 years ago, exactly by this time, October, I will be running, everywhere as many of my colleagues were, and trying to attend the incident. So if you're not ready for that, I wasn't ready either. So suddenly, I had to set up a database that I didn't have. I have to set up a way for interpreting the samples and the measurements that came. You understand this later on. And also all the ideas behind that. You're not waiting for anything like that to happen in your life. And then, okay, and also, see, this is 1987 again. There is no internet. There is no cell phone, no nothing. So the way you have to communicate is by telephone, and also the computers are very slow at that time. So if today you go to a museum in microcomputers, for example, maybe the one I was using at that time was not the first one, but the second. So you can imagine. As a result of all that, when I got the news that the samples were coming, the accident was huge, and we have to attend, I didn't go home for 3 days. So I slept on my desk at the laboratory for 2 nights. And yes, but I needed to be there because that was my way for properly attending the problem and problem feeling that I was able to receive the samples, to get the results and try to contribute. Another thing that you'll see is that when you start seeing the samples and results or whatever coming, you see sample number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or whatever. Okay. But then 4 of the patients were transferred to Rio de Janeiro, where I was at that time. I wasn't in Goiania. So I went to Goiania 3 months, maybe later, after when they discovered the accident. But in Rio, I started getting together with medical doctors and, trying to contribute as much as I could. And then you see the faces of the patients, and then you see the girl they're going to see, one of the victims that died, and then you see her jumping, and you see her seeing that. Then you get engaged, so you see they're not a number anymore. Then you get truly motivated to, you get energy from anywhere. You are absolutely another person, and you try to do the best you can, although you're limited, but you try to put all the efforts you can there. So it's just something very moving that takes over you. And so everything, together is part of what we're going to see today. Okay, let's start the presentation. So the main source for this talk is this book. This is a free download that you can get from IAEA. There's a radiological accident in Goiania. And so this is, you can download, you have an electronic copy. So most of my presentation, the contents came from this book. So for those who don't know, actually, this is a picture from that book that pictures the Goiás state. So for those who are not from Brazil, so this is Goiás and this is Goiânia. That's how people say there. Okay, the Goiás state was actually modified. Now they have divided this up in two. So this is, they call Tocantins state today. But at that time, this is what shows at that time for the 1987. So another important thing to show you here is that the distance from Goiânia, which is here, to Rio and São Paulo is around 800 miles. So over 1,000 kilometers. So and then you can see if you have to go there to bring resources to Goiânia, or also to receive the samples. This is a huge logistic problem they have to overcome. In addition to that, so this is people say, oh, the whole Goiania was contaminated. It's not true. So a small area, you will see, I will show you later, of that city that has been contaminated, and that's what you see. So now, okay, this is what we can see from that time, the numbers from that time. So the population of Brazil today is much, much bigger. But the important thing is that Goiania was already a huge city, was 1 million inhabitants. So it's something sizable. And you can imagine the problem that you have to, in order for you to search for a radioactive source or pieces of scattered radioactive source all over the city. So, for example, this is a picture from Goiania from that time, 1987. So you see skyscrapers and, something showing you that it's an interesting town. And this, what you can see from the top, with the addition that this area here, I hope my pointer is showing you a good view. This is the exposition place, so where they have cattle and where they have shows. So at that time, I think that still today, Goiânia didn't have any significant industries, mostly cattle and agriculture. So that's what they had at that time. So another picture from Goiânia, also you see the buildings there. So a pretty sizable city. Another one. Okay, I apologize for the very wordy slide, but for me it's much easier to tell you like that instead of going. So it would be easier for us to follow what happened and how it happens. So about the end of 1985, a private radiotherapy institute moved this to new premises, to new places, and they took the cobalt-60 therapy source, but they left the cesium-137 unit without notifying the licensing authorities. And the licensing authority in Brazil would be the Brazilian National Nuclear Energy Commission, as you can see at the bottom of the slide. So, and this was required by law. So the old building was partially demolished, and the cesium-137 source became insecure. And so on December 13th, 1987, two people entered. They found some scrap value there. So they removed the source assembly from the radiation head, took home and tried to dismantle. So when they partly dismantled, the source became open without the shielding there. And so they got some external gamma radiation exposure, and they had localized burns in their bodies. And one had the arm being amputated. That what happened at that time. So the equipment was sold to a junkyard. This was a common practice there, where they could sold and sell and resell to other junkyards. So they found this in the abandoned house. So they took it to a junkyard. They sold it, and the source was ruptured, and this was a cesium chloride source inside, which is highly soluble and readily dispersible. So as a result, you have a reasonable environmental contamination plus external exposure plus internal exposure, that I mean by inhalation or ingestion of several people around. So the source blew in the dark and was passed from hand to hand. And because people found it a beautiful glue. And so the remnants of the source housing and the assembly, they were sold to a scrap and to the second junkyard. And then source fragments were distributed to more persons and attracted by the source glow. And this proceeded for 5 days, by which time a number of people were showing gastrointestinal symptoms arising from their exposure to radiation from the source. So you see, then this symptoms started coming, but they could be easily associated with a tropical disease, as you will see. So very difficult to pinpoint that this would be caused by radiation. And then, as you can see here, so of course, vomits and diarrheas, and they did not seize over-the-counter drugs. So some looked for hospitals and were treated as, carrying infectious, contagious diseases, but of course, no improvement. So they, like I said, could have been a tropical disease. So the symptoms have not been localized until September 28th. One of the victims was the wife of the first junkyard owner. She connected the illness with the source and took part of it to the public health department. So they called their vigilância sanitária. So she took part of the source in a bus, and this was in a bag, and she said, "This is killing my family." And so she had an estimated whole body dose for those who are not from the field of radiation. This is a pretty sizable dose, and an estimated intake of 100 megabecquerels. And she died on October 23rd. She was only 38 years of age, and she was of the victims, by the way, that I could see when I visited the Rio de Janeiro hospital when I was there. So her action started a chain of events which led to the discovery of the accident. So on September 28th, a local physicist, my good friend of mine, Walter, who is watching this presentation today, a huge honor. So he was the first one to access the source and the health department by monitoring it. So he took actions on his own initiative to evacuate the area. At the same time, he informed the authorities. He was the true person there. So the speed and the scale, so what he did, he isolated the source, he called the authorities, and then the speed and the scale of the response were impressive. Put in a parenthesis here, we got, I was in Rio, like I said, we got some phone calls, and then, someone is calling saying that he has used several detectors, and all of them were measuring high values. Well, maybe send one or two people there. And then when they started seeing that it was not only that source, that the source could have been spreaded, so the dimensions of the problem were much greater than expected. Then, okay, something real big started after that. So the speed and the scale of the response were impressive, like I said, and people were screaming at the Olympic Stadium. Come on, you guys, we are in Brazil, so we got to have soccer or football involved somehow. That's why the people were taken to the Olympic Stadium, and supposed contaminated victims were separated. So how did these people went there? This is a question that I have. Like I said, 1987, no internet, no WhatsApp, no nothing. So what they have used were radio stations, TV, and loudspeakers on the street. People were asking people to show up to the Olympic Stadium. So what they did, they were quickly interviewing people, and if after they have been externally monitored, if they had shown some contamination, they have been separated, and people started to interview them. Where do you live? What was the contact with the source? And from there, they started to build up the story. So more severely irradiated, contaminated patients were transferred to the Marcílio Dias Naval Hospital in Rio, where, like I said, I went there to attend some meetings with the doctors there. And several other sites of significant contamination were quickly identified, identified, and residents were evacuated. As you normally do in a chronology of an incident, so you start with the early phase, then you progress towards intermediate phase, and then after that, you go to the recovery phase. So the early phase is a medical response. So shielding, surveys, evacuation, everything going on. And so as they say, they have loss of control from the September 13th when the source was taken there until the 28th when the person went to the clinic, and so the source got isolated there. And then you have initial actions by Kenan until the control was gained on between 29th of September and 3rd of October. So, and then intermediate phase where administration, reorganization, you have some decontamination on several foci that were there, container designs, logistics, everything. And this took from October the 3rd to the 10th. And then the recovery phase, reorganization, decontamination, demolition, restoration of houses and all that, until December 21st. And see, this date, December 21st, is because the president of Kenan at that time, Dr. Rex Alves, so he promised the employees that they wanted to have them home before Christmas. And that's, they have worked like crazy there, decontaminated and putting all the situation in order to have this deadline met. So pretty remarkable. So the Brazilian authorities, they informed IAEA, which is International Atomic Energy Agency, about the accident soon after its discovery and requested assistance, experts, equipment, everything. And also during the initial phase, several experts also came through international agencies and through existing bilateral agreements. by bilateral agreements, I mean, Brazil has an agreement with Argentina, and they have some sort of cooperation in radioactive and nuclear field. And so doctors came from Argentina. They were very, very nice. They helped a lot. So this is what you could see on the newspaper. So people got separated. You see a goal here, right? So this is a soccer stadium, and this is how it was. So, and then, okay, another news from the news, you see, this is the doctor, one of the doctors that took care of the patients there, Dr. Brandão. And then you see the people there, and this guy got the Wagner Motta, he got the hands burned, you know, because he handled with the source. Oh, sorry. This is a group of people in a soccer stadium, you know, waiting to, well, as you can see, to service the patients there. And okay, let's now talk about the cesium source. So the cesium source is a regular medical source. So we have this shielding here all around the source. And then you see, this is, you know, you turn the source down on the aperture, and then you irradiate the patient, you know, for a treatment, and then it comes back. So you retract it by turning it. And so the interesting thing here is that for my metric friends, so this is 5 by 5 centimeters. And for my American friends, this could be 2 by 2 inches. So it's a very, very small piece of metal. And then you see this represents the salt into here, the cesium chloride into that. And the activity was very, very high. It's still at that time. The source was made in 1971, as we see here. But by the time of the incident, it still was almost 51 terabecquerels, which is very, very high at that time. If there is any good thing in all this problem, is this. So the emission that mostly came from the barium-137 metastable with a very high energy, 660 kilo electron volts. So this is very easy to measure. And this, you know, was because of that, was not an alpha source, was a beta gamma source. Then, you know, this could be easily to measure. And like I said, to detect pieces of the sources all around the environment and in persons as well, as you will see. So this is the actual picture of the source as was taken to the Vigilância Sanitária, to the health department there. So, and this was with a chair. This was taken to the backyard, and then after that, it received a cover of concrete, and you know, in order to isolate it, and from there it went to the repository. So as you can see here, the dose rate was the surface was 10 gray per hour. It's just humongous, and in a distance of only 1 meter, 0.4 gray per hour. It's very, very huge. So this, you can read it better in the IAE book that I told you, but you know, I'm going to give you sort of a very brief idea. So this represents the clinic, and this represents the two people that got the source there, and they're taking, and they took to their, actually it was the backyard. So, and you can see lots of houses around there. So after that, they started opening. And then you can see the source was open near this tree. Represents a mango tree that for now was towed. You were able to get autoradiography. So the cesium was sucked up by the plant, and this was distributed inside there. So it's as you can see, the amount of radioactivity that was inside there. So after that, what they did, they took the shielding, and this was the metal part that they wanted to sell to the junkyard. And after that, to another junkyard. And so as you can see, also this junkyard could have paper to be recycled. And you can imagine if this recycled paper would be contaminated, so this would be spread it all over, you know, through many cities. But fortunately, this was stopped before this process took place. And okay, from here you see this shows that the woman having the source into that, so she took the bus, and then finally to that health department. And you see, this shows representation that she took buses and many other things. So you have a more detailed description in here that I strongly recommend you to read in case you are interested in this subject. So in order to have an idea about the contaminated sites, so this shows, this will be the clinic, And then, okay, the source was taken here to the 57th Street. And then, okay, the source was ruptured. And then you see the three junkyards, C, D, and E. And also, if you can see here, there is a creek. So there's also possible water contamination from pieces of the source. And this is though from here to here, this is the building of the Vigilância Sanitária, the health department, where the source was taken. So this is a small area of the town they call airport district. That I think it's still called today like that. Okay, so this shows some measurements, some dose rates at the side of 57th Street. So this is the terrain, and you see this is exactly the side where the mango tree was. So it's a 111 rem per hour, 1.11 sievert per hour. It's a lot. And then also you see here, this is the size of the junkyard of the 6th Street, where you see the Capimpuba Creek, and also very huge measurements into that. You see, this is already not where the source was ruptured, but after that, it's still very radioactive. And this shows a diagram of the most highly contaminated persons. So I am emphasizing here in red those who died. So, and you see many names are ended by FFF. So we have the impact of F indicating a single family. So this was a real tragedy for them, the happening like that. And so those with the closed corners here, they represent people that stay in hospitals. And those that have open corners, they represent the outpatient patients. So just came, but they didn't stay there in the hospital, but they were going there every day. So it's a lot of people. And then, okay, this also that you could see in the newspapers at that time. This shows the woman that discovered the source and took the source to the health department. This is the girl who was only 6 years old at that time. And this is the two guys that they lived down on the street, and also they died. So those 4 people died at that time. So here in Portuguese means 4 lost lives. That's what you see here from this headline. So this was the clinic at that time, not before or after. This was exactly as it was when the source was there. So the derelict radiotherapy clinic in Goiania. So, and you see another picture of that. So absolutely no barriers, right? So no doors, no windows, no nothing. Another view of the clinic. And so that's why they saw the source there on some of the walls, and that's they took it from there, and that how everything happened. So decontamination and environmental monitoring. So first of all, we need to understand how was all the distribution of it, how everything was divided at that time. So you have the presidency of the republic there. And so right down there at that time, we have the National Nuclear Energy Commission. And then as also you had 3 institutes under that. So you had the Nuclear Engineering Institute, which is in Rio de Janeiro. You have the Institute of Radiation Protection and Dosimetry, IRD, where I used to work, and I worked there for 18 years. And another institute in Sao Paulo, Institute for Nuclear and Energy Research, in Sao Paulo. So people from those 3 places came to help in terms of measuring and doing helping to identify and isolate the places. And we at the IRD, as we call at that time, we were the ones responsible for doing the dosimetry, so for analyzing the fecal and urine samples that came there, also for producing the very nice devices for radiation detection on the body, as you will see, a whole body counter, and also all the databases, all the information regarding the patients were there. In addition to that, we also had a very good and important technique called cytogenetic dosimetry. That what you do is study the chromosomal aberrations from radiation exposure, and then you can associate the number of aberrations with the dose received by the person. It's a very, very, very important technique. So, okay, in terms of area monitoring, so they did aerial survey by helicopters. They took water samples from creeks and wells, and also they went through 26 square miles or 67 square kilometers were monitored, with cars and road monitoring, for example. You see 80% of Goiania was monitored over 2,000 kilometers. It's a lot. And some areas also outside Goiania to make sure that nothing was there. As a result, the main foci of contamination were the junkyards and the surrounding residences, and a total of only 1 square kilometer. That's what the contamination was. So, like I said, not the whole Goiania. So, just as a very localized piece of Goiania was hit. So, this is exactly the decontamination of 57th Street. So, this is the mango tree I was talking about. This is right here. And so, okay, some of my colleagues at that time, they're putting down the house, they're cleaning up the whole thing, decontamination, and everything that you see here is going to be radioactive waste. And then, okay, this is the last picture I got. Maybe it's different today, but this is the one how the terrain is today. So there is no memorial, as far as I know, nothing there. So it's a clean, empty place that you see open. That it's fine. So this is the mobile radiation monitor that was used there. So as you can see, it's a kind of a station wagon with the detectors in the back. And then by slowly driving through the street, we were able to monitor and try to spot some contamination in there. So this would be contaminated paper to be shipped out. So there will be some paper people managed very nicely to stop that. And so you see, as you see, there's waste everywhere, right? So more waste. So my colleagues here are stacking the waste containers to be taken to a temporary storage site at that time. So you see more waste. What they did here, you see, those are concrete slabs that were put here, and those were the temporary repository was. So they decided by a very careful set of measurements, measuring the land, seeing the permeability, everything that you can think of. And they decided, the final repository can be right beside this place. So the only thing they had to do is to move all these containers or these packages from here to here, and then surround, fence the area that, to isolate it from the public. So, and you see more waste to a point that only 100 grams of cesium chloride resulted in 3,500 cubic meters of waste that could be translated into 275 truckloads. So you see only 100 grams of that. And so you see now you have to handle all that. Now you have other problems to face, right, after the decontamination. And then you see here the construction of the final repository was very carefully done, following a lot of international standards, very nice constructions. And you see here, this site, and then the containers and all the packages were put right inside here. And then you see after that it was covered, and after covering that was fenced and guards and all that, to the point that they put the visitor center in there. So you have this is the reception of the final repository. And I want to call your attention to some flags in here. So this is the Brazilian flag. This is the state of Goiás flag. This is the Brazilian National Nuclear Energy Commission flag. But there's another flag I want to show you too. This is the flag of Badia de Goiás, the city near where the repository is located. Yes, we got cattle, we got corn, and we also got a radioactive repository there. So as you see, it's a small town. It's only 27 kilometers from Goiania, and its population in 2005 was only around 6,000 people. So you see the impact what that kind of thing resulted. So regarding the contaminated sites, you got 8 main foci. You got some, you can read yourself. So 45 public areas and 46 houses decontaminated, and 7 got demolished. So in terms of individual monitoring and medical care, so they had 112,000 people being monitored. Remember when I told you about the soccer stadium and people going there for monitoring? That's what we got. So you have all that amount of people being monitored there. And so also for the external and internal doses, external mean people was externally were internally irradiated, externally, excuse me, and internal doses mean cases that people might have inhaled or ingested the radioactive material. So 49 admitted to hospitals, and in 22 in intensive medical care for death, and well, and one person got the forearm amputated, as I have already mentioned. So this is pictures of the monitor at the Olympic Stadium. So they started entering the stadium, and from there they started being screened and separated. And this is my friend Walter in action. Look at that. So he's monitoring a policeman there, and this guy was very important. This was the one who measured all the things, who discovered and isolated. This is Walter, a good friend of mine. Okay, and then individual monitoring. So you will see there are three kinds of monitoring I'm going to explain to you. So one was what we call an improvised whole body counter installed at the Goiania General Hospital. A whole body counter, as you will see in pictures in a while, it's a device that you have a detector outside the body. And maybe you remember when I said there was a very high gamma energy. So that energy that, if you have inhaled or ingested a cesium, the energy emitted inside there goes outside the body, and you are able to monitor, to detect in a detector. So you can monitor parts of the body, localized parts, or the whole body itself, depending on the geometry. The geometry is selected by the distribution of the radio element inside the body. So in this case, as you will see, the cesium is distributed, assumed to be distributed all over, equally all over the soft tissues of the body. You also have urine and fecal samples that were sent to IRD and Rio. I tell you, it's not very pleasant to deal with them. I don't have to tell you much about it, right? And also blood samples that were taken and were for what I said, the cytogenetic dosimetry. So in order to search for possible aberrations in there, chromosome aberrations. And this is, I made to the news. So you see individual monitoring. This is me. And if you compare with me there, you want to cry, right? Because this was me 33 years ago. So, and this is my good friend Ligia, we're handling the samples where they're coming. And this was what was came to the news at that time. This is October the 4th in 1987, showing the patients coming to Rio, trying to explain what the cytogenetic dosimetry was, and also how to determine the contamination. So the division that they did there in order to take care of the patients was remarkable. So you have the site of the accident here, like Goiania. Then, okay, you saw the triage done at the Olympic Stadium, like I said. And then, okay, they established an area at the Goiania General Hospital, what we call secondary care. And then, okay, to see the the primary care physicians trying to take care of those patients, and also other specialties like laboratory services, also assisting the secondary and the tertiary care that were especially done in a naval hospital in Rio for the most irradiated, the worst cases, right, that were taken there. That's where I used to go. And then you see here the international cooperation also showing here. So, and it was a kind of a organization that proved to work. So in case you've never seen one, this is a case of a radiation wound 25 days after the radiation. This person put the source on his pocket. This is a thigh. So this was direct contact from the radiation that was in the pocket to the thigh of a person. And this is 25 days, right? So if you see 95 days after the radiation, it doesn't get better. So you have to have a special medical team to do the cleaning, to do all the medical treatment into that, and it's very difficult to improve. So after that, and still today, people are developing a very important techniques in order to make it heal. So this is something, it's very difficult to heal. And you see this lesion is between 10 by 12 centimeters, so it's very sizable. So this was the case of a person that she saw the glowing salt and she put it on her neck. So, and you see that she got radiation burns right from the salt, right there. So in terms of internal exposure, so the distribution and retention of cesium, like I said, cesium behaves similarly to potassium. And after it goes to the blood, it's being accumulated by several body tissues. So for the purposes of the dosimeter that we do, we say that cesium is uniformly distributed throughout the body tissues after the clearance from the blood. So once it's there, it goes to all the soft tissues. However, if you see here, this is the model that, the biokinetic model that we have used. This was 1987. This model dates from around 1979. We just had blood, and we have two terms, one that represented the short retention, another one represented the longer retention, and you see the connection with feces and blood very simply done. This is the current cesium biokinetic model from 2017. As you see, it's much more elaborated, so it has several organs into that, and also showing the secretion from the GI tract, and also the very well-established connection with the feces, portal vein, and everything that endogenous excretion, everything is there. And also you see for the kidneys, also the urinary bladder content in urine. And the importance for developing models like this, where you describe the urinary excretion and the fecal excretion very nicely, is because you're going to use urinary and fecal data in order to interpret what is inside the person. So that's why the better you do it, the more accurate your results are going to be in terms of the interpretation when you measure the urine or feces, or even when you measure the radioactivity outside the body, what was the intake, what's going to be the radioactive dose that this person will have, what's going to be the risk, and so on. Several other information you can get out of that. So this is the first whole body counter measurement that was done there by my friend Carlos and my friend Bernardo. Maybe some of them are watching now. So as you can see, it's a tropical country. Come on, they have used a swimming pool chair, since you're there. So the detector got very high, and here you see it's inside this shielding, this lead shielding into here. So this was put initially in the Goiania General Hospital. The detector is a 20 by 10 sodium iodide, and so 2 meters above the floor, and only 2-minute counting. Then as the time passes, so people start releasing, the cesium from their body. So you see the height was dropped to 1.4 meters, and as a later incarnation of that, people had to stay 30-minute counting, and the limit of detection was much smaller, 300 becquerels, and only 80 centimeters from the person. So this is me in 2012. They were doing a 25-year Goiania meeting there, and occasionally I was in Rio, and so I attended it, and this is the same frame that you can see from that time, and the chair too. And okay, in terms of dose distribution for the patients and their families, so actually 129 people, but you see, this is the girl, and this is the aunt that, she was her aunt, the woman that discovered the source and took it to the health department. And these are other family members, but the majority of the people got smaller doses. In terms of what you see in comparing the internal doses, so the cytogenetic dosimetry that shows by the red color here, this is the dosimetry established by cytogenetic measurements. So by measuring the cells and counting the chromosomal aberrations into that. And the green part in here is internal dose that was mostly calculated by going backwards, using the urinary and excretion measurements, as well as the whole body counter results and counting them. So you see this adolescent and children, this is for sure is the girl. She was the highest dose that we had there at that time. So, and then workers involved, it was a very nice job. They have 1,009 workers working at that time, and 77% of them got only 1 millisievert, while the highest dose were only 43 millisieverts, 4.3 rem, which is less than, used to be the annual limit of those. So that's very, very well handled. So in terms of internal contamination of the people, you have the Prussian blue. So this was the name of the medicine was Radiogardaz, was donated by the Federal Republic of Germany government at that time, and was given to the patients of all ages and proved to be very effective. So we knew at that time that Prussian blue should be the right medicine to give to decontaminate the people. But we didn't know how effective that was or how many pills we have to give them. And this, after that, people learned a lot, and many important work came after that by knowing the necessary dose or the minimum dose to be given to a patient in order to be effective. So this shows, for example, here when someone is taking the Prussian blue, so it shows the rapid decrease of the radioactive material inside the body. So this is the measurement of the body radioactivity, and this is the time after the intake of that element. So it shows that if the person had taken Prussian blue all the time, will go like that. But then on part B here, the person stopped taking it. So you see coming to a slower release of the radiation from the body. So, and then we come to the press. And the press, as you see, the same word for the press, but actually they come and press you against the wall. They squeeze you the more they can. They try to extract all the information they can from you. And not many times, with the intention of informing the public. They want to sell. That's the experience I got. So, for example, here's written, cesium-137 has radiation higher than that of Chernobyl. Can you believe that? Of course not. This is what they wrote. And so, and you have also radioactivity contaminated 67 people in Goiania, cesium in junkyard, it spreads radioactivity all over Goiania. So not actually the thing. In addition to that, cancer incidence should rise sharply. All the studies done, all over 30 years, they didn't find any incidence of that. So that's what you see from that time. So that's why when you look at news like that, right after some incident, like even from Fukushima, for anything that can happen, don't believe everything that you read. Wait until something come out of that, because at that time, not many people know about that. It's like the COVID, right? So we know there's a problem, but people are still slowly learning about the COVID effects and how to mitigate them at this time. So, and then, okay, the key elements for dealing with the press and public, you need to educate them, because you have several terms in terms of radiation that's difficult for people to understand. And also you have to build trust relationships. So this mutual confidence and trust between the population, public and private organizations, and also the response organization that has to transmit immediate confidence to the public during all phases of the accident. At that time, the radiation management manager person, who was the Dr. Julio Rosenthal, that unfortunately passed away, he went to the TV every day by 5 p.m., telling people what was going on and explaining calmly everything that, the evolutions in terms of the mitigation of the accident. In addition to that, he visited many people in their houses, and also many people were not trusted in the contamination. So they were serving him water and food, and they see that he or also some of my colleagues, if we're going to eat that, then they could trust that, okay, people are eating the food from my house, so I can make sure that my house is decontaminated. So a lot of psychological effects, as you will see in the next slides here. Also a booklet explaining the usual terms and units is important, and most of all, patience. You've got to be very patient in order to face this kind of thing. So other facts. Can you believe that? Okay, so the woman, the aunt, and the girl, they died. So they have to be buried. So what they did, they have constructed coffins of 600 kilograms or around 1,300 pounds in lead coffins in order to bury them. But the population got revolted because they thought that the radiation was going to spread in that cemetery. It was a very difficult thing. And miraculously, I can say, Catholic priests came there and calmed them down. And they accepted that nothing wrong was going to be happening. And so the two victims were buried in the Goiania cemetery as they wanted to be. Also, things like right after the accident, this is November already. So fear of cesium takes off Goiania's, Goiás from the Providencias Bazaar. So there's a bazaar that you have representatives from all the states. So they, when they saw the people from Goiás there, they want to expel them because they could eventually be contaminated, So of course you see a lot of embarrassment, humiliation, and it's still there. So intermediate phase of the accident, still people thinking about that. So, and then some experts beyond radiation protection, right after the cleanup, the Kinen, who was the main responsible for the cleaning, they bought a house right at the 57th Street. It was a very, very smart move. So very close to the place where the source was ruptured. And so they have established there the Goiania Administrative Office, the whole body counter, the laboratory for handling the samples, and stayed there for some years. So some of my colleagues ended up divorcing and establishing new families. Can you believe that? So they stayed so long in Goiania, then things happen like that. So and also changed our lives forever. So my good friend Carlos, he may be watching this today. He was the person that constructed the whole body counter, and after that, he started. He was the head of emergency preparedness at the Kinen. He did a very nice and important job at that time. He still stays today. And he ended up changing fields because of that. The importance, the impact of that all that experience caused to him. And you can imagine, so people wanted to get jobs and they couldn't. So they have to emit radiation-free certificates for persons and products from the contaminated region and avoid discrimination. So of course this is stupid, of course that, but no one was contaminated. People are being handled, and also, in case you don't know, the radioactive half-life of cesium is huge. In case you guys are already searching the Google, but I have to tell you that the biological half-life, the one that stays in the body, is eliminated, reasonably fast. Around 100 days, for half of that will be gone, and so on. So I was involved in a committee for establishing lifetime pensions. Can you believe me? Wait a minute, you are an internal dosimetrist and you were involved in a lifetime? Yes, I ended up there. And it was a difficult job to do. So then the cleanup was done, and as you can expect, for over 30 years after the incident, some social, medical, and mostly political problems remain. So you still have there. And my final remarks is that in a large-scale event, if you are a radiation protection professional, it doesn't matter where you are or what you do, you will participate, and very heavily. They will catch you. So you better learn a lot about this, about how to respond to an accident before you go there. And this is my final slide. So I hope you have survived me. Of course, the accident you have, and also, but besides that, I want to thank you all for being there, watching me, and also thank a lot the foundation, the Herbert Parker Foundation, for having me here. I feel very honored. Thank you very much. And I would send my special regards to all my Brazilian friends and colleagues. Some may have even watched this presentation today, according to what I was told, who dedicated relentless efforts in mitigating the impact of this incident. And I have to acknowledge me here. So Dr. Julio Rosenthal, he graciously gave me many of the slides that you see here. This person was the emergency manager of that accident at that time. And also to my good friend, Gunstana Mello, who gave me a lot of good slides also regarding those and all the beautiful plots that you saw there. Thank you very much. And okay, I'm ready for questions. I hope you are too. Thank you. Okay, nice.
Thank you again very much, Dr. Bertelli, for a very interesting and engaging presentation. We do have some questions that have come in. I'll read them, and I'll be very interested in some of your responses. The first question is, this was a very interesting presentation, very similar to nowadays pandemia. People are not aware of the danger. They can't see what causes the damage. In your opinion, what is the most effective way to mitigate the spread of this contamination?
Oh, I know this guy. Okay. My good friend Manuel, I cannot respond in terms of COVID. I don't know. I'm not the expert in that. But in this case, as you can see, if you don't hide, if you're open, and if you believe in science, as they had believed at that time, I think this is the best way to go. So you can't go wrong with that. You have defensible arguments, and so it's a start for responding. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, our next question is, who paid for the cleanup?
Very nice question. So the Brazilian public paid, So you can imagine that this came out of, okay, let me see. I got the impression that the hospital staff would not enter the room to help the little girl. Is that correct? Did she get no medical help? No. Well, first of all, who paid for the clinic? This was the Brazilian people paid. It's a lot of money, not in the budget, so as you can expect. So in terms of taking care, your question is very common. So it was very difficult for them to find the medical staff who were willing to participate into that. So they have constructed, but besides the medical staff, you have a competent radiation protection personnel that were there to assist them. So, and then you have to put shieldings, for radiation shielding to minimize the exposure that any one of those medical staff members would have. And also, yes, she was treated. Also, I could talk to her, for example, after I saw her, and then I was attending, meetings there. Then all my colleagues, oh, let's send some dolls or pads or pens and everything that we could, So of course, every time I showed up there, she was looking at me, and she was already expecting something from us. Yes, you get some dose, and yes, but also what you see, there is a control. People carry those dosimeters, and they're temporarily read, and so there's a safe level that it can be exposed to, and from there, that's how it is. So it's a good radioactive control in that. It's not like that. Not only well, you're exposed. No.
Okay, there's another question here regarding, you'd mentioned that they stopped some of the recycled material from getting out into the public. Was that as a direct result of the contact tracing, if you will, that went on? Or were there protocols in place at that time to detect potential contamination, recycled material? And if not, did this accident cause those such protocols to be put in place?
That type to screen recycled materials for possible? Yes. Okay, they had their protocols, but as you may expect, so many other things came from there. You always learn something, and you modify your laws after that. Yes, but they had levels. They have that you can classify them as a background level, but also many times, in order to be safe, a lot of them became radioactive waste. So in order to be safer.
Very good. Another question: which do you think is better to use, the radiation unit for victims, Sievert's, Gray's, or Gray's equivalent?
Very nice question. Okay, so this is a common question also that it comes. This will depend on the kind of dose you're looking for, right? So if you're thinking about a high dose, there is not much sense in terms of putting sievers into that. That's why during the presentation you may have seen Gray's for patients and sievert for the personnel, because that's how it's done. But Gray's, yeah, like I said, Gray's for the patients would be interesting, and I would use sievert for the personnel. Yeah.
Okay, one other personal question, if you will. Do you think that there were lessons learned from this event that could be incorporated or have been incorporated in current protocols and procedures for responding to a radiological dispersal device?
Yes.
A so-called dirty bomb.
Yes, and I forgot to say this when I started, I think. But yes, the importance of this talk nowadays, that having been given them several incarnations of this talk through maybe 8 years, or yeah, and the importance is that the similarity with a dirty bomb scenario. But in the case of a dirty bomb scenario, of something, so for those who don't know, a dirty bomb scenario would be you have explosives, and there are that you have a radioactive source incorporated into that. So when it explodes, you have a regular explosive plus pieces of the sources spread everywhere. And so, as we can imagine, also besides that, you have wounds, right? So you have sources incorporated into wounds, and this would be another area that was not contemplated here, but of course has been contemplated by the radiation protection community in terms of the wound models, in terms of how the cesium got from the wound to the rest of the body. And also, also other protocols can come after that. Like if the pieces are big or small, should we operate the person? Because it has so many shrapnels in there that would be inoperable, or should we take one by one? What is the risk on that? So a lot of things you have to judge. But yeah, definitely you have that. And definitely, I think the most important thing this is how to how you can you put 112,000 people who have to call them and to start the screening after that? And so how can you separate that? No, this is the importance of, I think, how can you attend them all? And yeah, that's I think that the Goiania scenario was very important for this kind of possible scenarios.
Well, very good. Thank you again very much, Dr. Bertelli. I
I
think
thank
that's
you.
the end of our questions, and we're running a bit short on time. So what I would like to do is give thanks to Dr. Bertelli, as well as some special thanks to Washington State University Tri-Cities and Northwest Public Broadcasting for all their help in putting this broadcast together.
Yes.
In particular, I'd like to thank Kelly Slocum and Megan Murray at the WSU Tri-Cities campus, and Tom Hungade and Matthew Kawamura for their help in putting this together. Without their help, we certainly could not have been able to make this virtual lecture possible. Again, if you have any additional questions or information that you'd like to have on the Parker Foundation, please go to our website, which is here on the screen. If you have any specific comments or questions that you need answered or would like to inquire about the Parker Foundation, please send an email to me, again, at the email address on your screen. Thank you again for everyone who tuned in. I hope you found this lecture to be as engaging and interesting as I did. Thank you all again very much. And last parting comment, take care, stay safe, and stay healthy. Thank you again.
Yes. Thank you. Okay.